We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support this college football Rebel Outpost show with a donation. Just hit the $ where you make a comment and I'll get you a super chat as quick as I possibly can. Everybody, and I mean everybody, even those evil Badgers, those evil Hawkeyes, the Seminoles, the Tigers, the Tar Heels, everybody is welcome into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls later in the show. Excuse me, I apologize. I knew that yesterday's live show was going to be somewhat unpopular. And I was planning today to do my way too early SEC football rankings for 2025. I'm going to drop I'm going to drop you a little teaser right now when it comes to my SEC rankings. Okay, are you ready? Are you ready for this? Greg the Gold, no longer Greg the Cooler. Greg the Gold for 2025. Ole Miss, 12. The Volunteers, 9. The South Carolina Gamecocks, 4. Am I crazy? Am I crazy, or am I crazy like a fox? Hopefully tomorrow we're going to get into a deep SEC way too early rankings for the 2025 season. But I wanted to hit on this subject once again on what has happened here. I did a live show yesterday and I brought a very strong opinion based upon history, based upon who I talked to, based upon my own biasness, which could lead me astray. I do not have a crystal ball. If I ever had one, it cracked many years ago. However, there is a certain history that I built up with you all. And before I started this YouTube channel, I've been fortunate to muster up some incredible relationships. And all I can give you is my best shot of the peak around the corner. And it is not matching up. It's not matching up to the chatter behind the curtain. For the most part, I'm going this way. And for many of the college football reporters, they're going the opposite way on what the future holds. And that is fine. I think that's pretty cool, because when we disagree, that is interesting. Oftentimes I tell you guys the chatter behind the curtain, and that is also the information I have received, and then I let you all know about it. And it's oftentimes correct. This time, what I believe and what a lot of reporters are believing, not all of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, and it's a growing number, we're just on the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And that is okay. But again, I'm going to give you my reasons why, in my opinion on this, is pretty strong. I'm not waffling on this. And if I end up being wrong, I'm going to take the big L. But there is a growing chorus, a growing number of reporters that think what happened in the ACC, what happened in the Pac-12, what is going on is going to bring in a revolution in college football, in college sports where, or at least let's stick to college football, where there's not going to be conferences anymore. There's not going to be the traditional structure of conferences. Super League, baby. Everything's going away. Now, I talked about this yesterday, and some of you thought I was overstepping. I was giving that too much traction. Okay. All right. So today, just today alone, Dennis Dodd of CBS Sports comes out with an article. I'm going to read it. And I respect the hell out of Dennis Dodd, and he writes the article, but again, somebody has to get through my thick head. And I got a thick head. I got a gigantic head. The cranium is inches thick. Somebody's got to get through to me and explain the logic behind Dennis Dodd's article. Not only Dennis Dodd. John Wilner just put this out. What? How long ago? Less than an hour ago. A little less than an hour ago. With the ACC settlement and alignment of media rights contracts, we can set the doomsday clock of college football current conference structure. I ain't understanding this. I don't get it. I do not understand. Let's go to the Dennis Dodd article. But first of all, I want to do a roll call here. Now, the title of our show is North Carolina Chapel Hill is the linchpin for the next conference movement. Which, again, I'm going down this other road, and all the other reporters are going down a whole entire, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I just want to explain to you on this live show why I believe North Carolina is the linchpin. I have not kept that a secret. But again, I want to emphasize it one more day because okay? So we're going to get to why I titled the show North Carolina Chapel Hill is the linchpin for the next conference movement. Let me get to this Dennis Dodd article, because basically he wrote an article that this is how I described a growing number of media members yesterday. This is what they're thinking, okay? And maybe they're going to be correct. And maybe a lot of you also believe in what Dennis Dodd just put down. And maybe I'm going to be wrong. And that is fine. I'll take the L. But we've got to talk about it one more. We're going to be talking about it a lot of days. But one more day this week. I want to talk SEC football tomorrow. Dennis Dodd, ACC settlement paradox is one of the strength and futility, but college sports will eventually tear itself apart. The ACC has brought itself time by settling with Florida State and Clemson, but the writing is on the wall. Two things can be true regarding the ACC settlement this week of the crippling lawsuits brought by Florida State and Clemson. The resolution provides long-desired security and solidarity for our conference, and I would not agree with that. But let's get through this. A resolution provides long-desired security and solidarity for a conference that look to be ripped apart by those schools saber-rattling, and it also provides a blueprint detailing how college sports could be ripped apart. In settling suits, the ACC rather dramatically stratified itself. There are clear dividing lines, not unlike society itself, upper, middle, lower class, without disrespecting anyone. We'll leave it to the reader to figure out those classes. Just understand this, what Florida State and Clemson wanted, recognition that they are bigger brands, have more invested in football than the other members. That's not necessarily a bad thing. One, that economic recognition kept the conference together. Also, it's been done before in realignment. The Big 12 and the Big 10 welcome new members who agreed to take fractions of a full share to join. True, but the agreement, again, the agreement for Oregon and Washington. Okay, now I'm trying to stay on the beam here, okay? The agreement between the Big Ten and Washington and Oregon is that Washington and Oregon would get a full share on the next media negotiations. Full share. Like everything that Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State are getting. Everything that USC is getting. And everything that Wisconsin's getting. On and on and on. There is an agreement there. This is one of the many reasons why every single time, and I'm going to keep doing it because as host of College Football Peek Around the Corner, I got to keep poking and prodding no matter how much it makes me look stupid in front of people that I've known for a long time. I'm going to keep asking the question, but every time I ask the question, towards Big Ten people, they laugh at me. They scoff at me. The reason why Oregon and Washington took this half share is not because they're the middle class or the lower class, because they are building in there to be a fully invested member of the Big Ten, just like every other Big Ten school had to do. Because of the creation of the Big Ten network, we all took less. The only two schools that never took less is USC and UCLA. Again, not a good example. Not a good example of what is going on now. Oregon and Washington, there's a commitment from the Big Ten side, and the Big Ten ain't going to welch on that commitment. Okay, I got off track. I'm going to get off track a lot. There's a lot of stuff here. Okay. In fact, the Pac-12 broke apart because everyone was receiving equal shares. Again, I have to completely disagree. In fact, the Pac-12 broke apart in part. Now, he did say in part, because everyone was receiving equal shares. The unequal revenue sharing handed out to USC was not, if they would have gotten more and more and more money, it would not have kept USC in the Pac-12. Just like it ain't going to keep the ACC together, it wasn't going to keep the Pac-12 together. In my strong but yet humble opinion, I believe that people are learning the wrong lessons in all of this. Because when you start dividing up that pie, that revenue pie, that is not growing, that is not keeping up, you are going to shrink the resources going to your bottom half of the conference, and they are going to wither. With it, the conference is going to wither. The competition within the conference is going to wither. The games are going to matter less and less. There's going to be more blowouts. There's just the competition, the perception, the reputation is going to wither and eventually die. So again, unequal revenue sharing, while it got what Florida State wanted, it got what Clemson wanted, in part what Miami wanted, it's not the magic potion to keep the conference viable. Going on with the Dennis Dodd article. So what's the big deal in the ACC if it wasn't already? Now the conference has established itself as the clear number 3 among the Power 4. Any arrangement that keeps the league out of the courts is a win. The conference has established itself as the clear number 3. Again, not buying it. I don't quite understand that either. I understand Florida State, Miami. I understand Clemson. I understand North Carolina. I understand those brands. I get it. They're bigger. They're more up over the Big 12 for the most part. I get it. But the bottom half of the ACC is going to struggle more now than ever just to be able to be committed to the rev share, to the 20.5 million rev share. There's a gain for some ACC schools, but there is a loss for others. And if in a Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, Miami were planning on staying in this conference for 2030-31, all the way up to 36, and have this new media rights negotiation, the ACC is not going to do well in front of those potential media partners, because half the conference is going to be withering and dying behind the other Big 12, the Big 10, and SEC. So, again, I'm on a completely different path than Dennis Dodd, John Wilner, 247 Marcelo, on and on and on. I'm on a completely different beam here. But look deeper. There is a disparity in what is significant reorganization of revenue. While schools receiving bonuses by winning championships could earn $30 million or more, others will get $7 million and less, and it's going to be pretty consistent on those schools. They're going to be making $7 million and less. You should remember the Super League and Project Rudy that were largely dismissed by the power commissioners. They were largely dismissed by the Big Ten and the SEC. When the proposals came out last year, both of those models would reduce the highest level of college football to 70 to 80 schools with the centralized governance. That centralized governance and outside investment would unlock billions that have been tied up in separate conference media rights deals over the years. There's been billions of dollars locked up. Billions of dollars locked up. Essentially, that would mean less loyalty to the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC and the Big 12, and more loyalty to whoever is running that combo of 70 to 80 schools. So there's going to be less loyalties within these conferences who all been working together. I mean, the Big Ten, they're an advisory group with the SEC, the scheduling, the media rights, the Big Ten network, all of them. Less loyalty to all that, but more loyalty to who's ever running the 70 to 80 combo schools. Does that mean Ohio State's going to have less power, less influence among the 70 to 80, and they're going to be just fine with that? Michigan's going to be just fine with that. Alabama's going to be just fine with that. It would also cause a lot of people, back to the article, to alter their career paths. Sankey and Petitti might be out of a job in that model. Wow. The Super League folks were so brash in the rollout. CBS Sports asked one of the members last year about the prospects of the SEC and Big Ten commissioners' role in a new football college landscape. We'd buy them out, that person said. More than half, seriously. And now this is where, again, this is where I really get lost. Without saying it, the conferences, not just the ACC, are saying it. The breakaway that has been long discussed is taking place before our eyes. There's going to be a day when the likes of Alabama wakes up and asks itself, exactly why is Vanderbilt making the same money as us? Same for Ohio State and, say, Purdue. So Alabama's going to wake up and say, why am I making a little bit more money? Why am I making this? Why is Vanderbilt making the same media money as Alabama? Why is that happening? Oh, I don't like that. So therefore, I am going to be one of the backbones to a 70 and 80 Super League that is under one media rights agreement, and I'm going to be on a top tier media payout, and we're going to have to battle all those tiers out and everything. That's what's Alabama going to do? They're going to wake up one day and say, you know what, we're still making over $100 million more every single year in our athletic department than Vanderbilt, but we're sharing the tier one media agreement, and we should be making $5-7 million more than Vanderbilt. Therefore, we're going to rip up the SEC, and we are going to join a regional 70 to 80 college football league again. I'm having a hard time understanding why people believe this is going to happen. But more importantly, I do not see the evidence. And and I'm going to say this a couple times during this live show. If somebody can show me the evidence we are heading towards this direction, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to talk to who I need to talk to. Give me a name, not the person who is selling the Super League, but give me a name within one of these Big Ten and SEC schools that is actually taking this seriously. In the ACC, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina are the biggest brands. The new revenue sharing plan is merely a formal recognition. This eventual awakening represents the ongoing consolidation of the sport. No question about it. Realignment has claimed the Pac-12. It has also empowered 34 schools that make up the SEC and the Big Ten. Nothing of consequence happens in college athletics happens without their say-so. True. Whether those conferences would cede power for the greater good, meaning more money, again, has yet to be determined, meaning more money. Somebody's got to explain that to me. The difference, if the Big Ten and the SEC, if they break off together, I do not want that to happen, but if they break off together and they get a capital, Redbird Capital or somebody, capital funding to do this Super League among the two conferences, are you saying that structure is going to make less money than the Super League of 70 to 80 teams? Why? Why would that make less money? If this is such a great structure, if this is what's going to happen, why won't the Big Ten just do it on their own? The SEC do it on their own or do it together? It gets back to my point where all these reporters are saying the same thing. When is the day that the Buckeyes wake up and see that Purdue is making the same amount of money as they are? First of all, the Buckeyes know that. Number two, why would the Buckeyes be upset about that, but then be okay with bringing 70 to 80 schools into a Super League based mainly on their Ohio State's massive brand value, the valuations that these private capital, private equity firms look at? Again, it doesn't make any logical sense to me. Make it make sense to me. The Super League would be backed by private equity. Third-party investment in college athletics is already about to blow up in a big way. So dismissing the Super League, Project Rudy, because of the funding doesn't make sense. I am not dismissing the Super League Project Rudy because of the funding plan. But why would the funding plan include Project Rudy? Why wouldn't the funding plan be just for the Big Ten if they want to do it? Or just for the SEC if they want to do it? Or a combination of both of them if they want to do it? What is the advantage of the 70 to 80 Super League? Again, I don't want either. I don't think anybody is dismissing Super League and Project Rudy. The fun, when it comes to we know that big money is out there trying to get in. Our whole PATC show for the last couple of months in 24 was the invasion of private equity, private capital, third party, strategic partnership coming into the college football space. It's what we've been talking about. We know it's coming, and it is. The Big 12 considered a private equity infusion of as much as $1 billion. The Big 10 is reportedly looking at private equity investment. Since at least last summer, the American Conference Commissioner Tim Panetti has been bullishly publicly on considering outside investment for his conference. Okay, that's all I'm going to get into that. Again, there seems to be this belief out there that these conferences, the writing is on the wall because of what happened in the ACC. That there's not going to be any the conferences are going away. Stuart Mandel said that yesterday. Right? Wilner, doomsday clock for the current conference structure. Everybody, not everybody, a lot of people think these conferences are going away because of what happened in the ACC. What happened in the ACC is this. They signed a grant of rights for 20 years. The amended grant of rights of 2016 went all the way to 2036. The Big Ten was renegotiating their media contract every 5-6 years. The ACC got behind. The ACC made a bad business deal. Not only that, but the ACC basically struck to a one-region conference. And the media partners, just like the Pac-12, one regional conference. Many years ago when Jim Delaney went to Penn State, got Penn State, and he wanted to get two other Eastern schools. Virginia and North Carolina turned the Big Ten down. He got Rutgers and Maryland. Jim Delaney said it was important for the Big Ten's value to become a two-region conference. And now they're a national conference. The Big 12, Brett Yormark understood it. He became a more national conference. There's more money in that. You talk about you wanting brands to play brands, big brands to play big brands more often. You know how you don't do that? You know how you don't achieve that? You go ahead and create a 70 to 80 Super League. You're going to have big brands playing big brands less often. What are you going to do? You're going to recreate the Pac-12? You're going to recreate regionalized football conferences? You're going to recreate the Big Ten West? What is this plan? I mean, you're going to have Big Ten teams in divisions along with teams that are not Big Ten. Same with the SEC. The Big Ten and the SEC doesn't want any. They don't want any part of this. Michigan, the University of Michigan. If the University of Michigan had it their way, they would play Northwestern every other year. So would Wisconsin. They're not necessarily looking at the biggest college football brands. There is way more to the value of the Big Ten than just the biggest, largest college football brands. The SEC is not going away, in my opinion. And I can't believe I even have to say this. The Big Ten is not going away. Now, in those conferences, they might become regional once again, where you have pods. But they're not going to partake in these other conferences and these other regions. The Big Ten network's not going away. The SEC network is not going away. Okay. I had a members only episode today. Episode 55. I hope if you are a member, you have watched that show. Ryan Willie, I'm confused about Bomber and Wild Youths calling you the OG on realignment, but keep pushing a Super League. They keep saying that the league will be between 60 and 72. Are they buying what Monty is saying? First of all, Bomber, Nathan, and Wild Youth, they call me the OG on realignment, and that's very kind of them. I don't think I deserve that at all. Wild Youth and Nathan, I believe, disagree with me, and that is absolutely fine. You know what? Thank goodness they do. Because if we all agreed, how boring would this all be? If we all agreed, Ryan Willie, that the Golden Gophers were going to win the Big Ten championship this year, there's no reason to have a YouTube channel. So I'm thankful that they disagree. And I don't believe that Nathan and Wild Ute agree with each other. Nathan, he likes the 72 to 80. He thinks maybe possibly 60, 48 to 60. Wild Ute believes in this 40-team Super League. So I don't think they're on the same page either. I don't think a lot of us are on the same page, to be honest. Thank you so much for the super chat, Ryan Willie. I do appreciate it. And once again, I'm not infallible. I could be dead wrong about all this. Okay? I could be dead wrong about all of this. But for the next part of the monologue, I am going to set out what I think is going to be either the evidence or lack of evidence of the Super League of either 40 top brand college football teams or the Super League of 60 to 80 schools. I think I can lay out something here in which we're going to know which way we are going. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do next. Ryan Willie, thank you for the super chat. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Oh, Virginia. That was Preston from Greensboro. That was the name of our early peak Cloak and Dagger episode. If you are a member, and if you haven't watched it, please go watch it. We're going to go through it again a little bit here today on the live show. So, what do I mean by Oh, Virginia? Now, I think one of the things that we all can agree on is that if there is a 40-team college football Super League or a 48-team college football Super League based upon what would be considered the 48 top college football brands, the University of Virginia, their football team would not be in the Super League. I think we all can agree on that, right? We all can agree on that. So, what I am offering to you all, a fig leaf in this. If Virginia, if there is a pursuit of Virginia, if there is smoke and steam when it comes to Virginia from the SEC and the Big Ten, I think that would offer more evidence in the next 3 years, let's say. It doesn't even have to be in the next 5. I'm saying the next 3 years. If we see it, hear it, smell it from the national reporters, anything, that is going to be evidence that the SEC and the Big Ten are not looking at Super League based upon private capital money coming in and taking charge of the top 40, 48 college football brands. Okay? If Virginia becomes pursued, if they become a target of the SEC and the Big Ten in the next 3 years, and I think that would be evidence that we're on the road where the fat guy of Minnesota is walking. He's waddling down. The fat guy from Minnesota is waddling down this road. If we see the Virginia situation, if they're being pursued, then it's going to be more of the traditional, we want to build this conference value, and it's not just about the college football brand that will bring us the value. In other words, there are other metrics that are important. Okay? Let's go back. The canary in the coal mine. Thank you, Jose. The canary in the coal mine. Let's go back into time. And it was just a short while ago. I mean, this just happened last summer, last spring. This just happened in the Holy Smokes Theater when I announced on June 15th that Petiti and Sankey walked out of the Holy Smokes Theater. When I announced that the targets were North Carolina and Virginia, that Florida State and Clemson, they were going to get there, and they're getting there. But it was all about North Carolina and Notre Dame. And then I made that announcement on June 15th. On August 15th or 16th, Brett McMurphy came out with the big article. And you remember what he said when he talked about if North Carolina ever became available? He said, do you know what he said when he said, if Clemson and Florida State become available with the other ACC schools like North Carolina, Virginia, if they all became available, it would be like an Oppenheimer ripple effect. Remember that? That was just a short, that was not even a year old. And I think and again, I could be dead wrong. But when I give you my opinion, I'm not trying to be wrong. I'm trying to be correct, but I could be dead wrong. But I think those reports of less than a year ago are still accurate, are still viable, are still real. Okay, so on the early Pete Cloak and Dagger episode 55, I didn't want to show like a bunch of tweets, a bunch of old posts. I could have done that. I was thinking about doing that, but I don't want to bog. So I found an article written by the Bleacher Report where it kind of sniped in some of these reports. And I think when we go through this short little part of the Bleacher Report of late last summer, I think you're going to get the idea. I think everyone's going to remember, oh yeah, that's what the chatter behind the curtain was just 9 months ago. Okay, let me go through it real quick here. Again, the Bleacher Report of last year. According to Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, many within the industry believe UNC is the most attractive expansion target for the Power 2. North Carolina, an industry source told him, is the linchpin. And that goes back to the title of our live show today. North Carolina, an industry source told him, is the linchpin. Ross Dellinger. It also isn't the first time that North Carolina has been mentioned in the same breath as the SEC and the Big Ten. In June, again, less than a year ago, ESPN, Pete Thamel, said that both North Carolina and Virginia would be coveted by both conferences, though Notre Dame was seen as the top prize in any potential future realignment. And as we all know, Notre Dame is in its own little box. If you take Notre Dame out of it, Virginia, North Carolina are the most coveted. Okay? North Carolina and Virginia mark a geographic, population, and recruiting battleground for the SEC and the Big Ten, Pete Thamel added. They are desirable media markets and could help PATC Money Shot number 1 of our live show today, could help with student recruiting, aka the student apocalypse. As they are the number 9, North Carolina, number 12, Virginia, most populous states in the country. And if you go deeper into that, North Carolina, Virginia have an incredibly growing demographics of young high school students that are going to be college-age students in the next 4 to 6 years, while most of the states in our glorious union called the United States of America, most states are seeing a student apocalypse. Big reason why Virginia and North Carolina, while the SEC and the Big Ten would love to brand those two states as SEC country, Big Ten country, because that is what the presidents want of both of those conferences. Both North Carolina and Virginia are are contiguous states for both leagues. It's all a moot point. It's all a moot point, of course, if the disgruntled ACC schools are unable to escape the conference's prohibited grant of rights, which binds their media rights to the ACC and ESPN until 2036, lest they pay an exorbitant exit fee. However, but if the ACC disbands or the courts cut down on those expensive exit fees, which just happen dramatically, expect the Tar Heels to be the SEC and Big Ten's first call. And then we're not even going to go through the Brett McMurphy article of August of last year. We're not even going to go through all the interviews that Brett McMurphy went on all these YouTube channels, 365 Sports, everywhere, saying, look, if there is a way for there to be a breakup of the ACC, if they could get out of this conference, if that exit fee would drop dramatically, if they could get out, North Carolina and Virginia would be targeted, but that would be also good news for Florida State and Clemson, because they need that to happen, and it would happen if those exit fees get cut dramatically. If there is a way out, if there is an implosion, an Oppenheimer-like ripple effect. Well, what did we just see happen in the ACC? By the way, before I forget, I have to take the L here at Peek Around the Corner. I have to take the L. I predicted that the settlement would be between $200 and $240 million to get out eventually. I was wrong on two parts of it. Number one, the total exit fee in year one is a lot less. It's $165. I also could not imagine that happened in 2025. I was thinking 26, 27, 20. So again, $165 million. $165 million wasn't in my thought process, so I got to take the L. Right now, here on March 6th. Okay. So what does that all mean? First of all, before I continue, some incredible generosity from the PATC family helping us keep the lights on here. Preston from Greensboro, North Carolina, 5 gifted memberships. Thank you, Preston from Greensboro. Thank you for your incredible generosity once again. VC Knoll, John Rudinsky, PA Knoll fan, James Turbin, Fighting Illini Ted, you are all gifted a membership. All gifted a membership. When you get an opportunity, please say thank you to Preston from Greensboro. And because you're all new members, go check out our early Peak Cloak and Dagger episode 55 when you get an opportunity. All of you are officially knighted. Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so much, Preston from Greensboro. I do appreciate your generosity so very much. Jimmy Austin, oh my goodness, Mr. Oregon Duck gifted 5 memberships once again. Jimmy, thank you for your continued generosity. You keep doing this over and over and over again. I'm very humbled by your generosity. Thank you, Mr. Duck. I appreciate it. KST, Stormy Cyclone, John Bennett, Laura Welburn, and Jay Go Blue all were gifted a membership. When you all get an opportunity, please say thank you to the incredibly generous Jimmy Austin. Thank you so very much. All of you are knighted officially without a question of a doubt. All of you are knighted, cloak and dagger. Go check out our library at PATC. Go to the description below the video. There's a link there. Or you can just go into the channel and you'll see the membership only episodes. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it. So, what does all this mean? What does all this mean? First of all, the next years ago, the Big Ten pursued Virginia and North Carolina. And they were turned down by both universities. They were turned down by both universities when Jim Delaney was the commissioner of the Big Ten. Jim Delaney, who I'm pretty sure he's an alumnus of North Carolina. I know he has spent a lot of time in North Carolina, a personal relationship with Bubba Cunningham. North Carolina turned down the Big Ten. North Carolina wanted to stay in the ACC. Virginia wanted to stay in the ACC. They enjoyed their power. They enjoyed their historic ties to the universities in their conferences. It's very difficult for a school to leave their conference. Very difficult. That is why I don't think the Buckeyes or Michigan or Alabama or Georgia are going to be all so warm to rip up their conferences when they're at the top of the heap economically, exposure-wise, with what they've got. It just doesn't make sense to me. The ACC is in a world of its own. It had a goal to go out to 2036. Florida State and Clemson were going to die of 1,000 paper cuts. They took the chance. They took the leap. They took the blows. And they got it done. Massive victory. But it was years ago, the big time, big brand schools did not want to leave the ACC. They didn't want to go. So it was Rutgers and Maryland. Now, of course, without a doubt, North Carolina has picked up the phone and they have called the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't know this for a fact. I do not have that nugget of information. And maybe they can't quite do it yet. Maybe they have to wait 30 days. As we know, Collins, the chairman of the board of the Florida State Board of Trustees, said something to the effect of it's going to take us 30 days to round up these documents and have this all official. Maybe the same thing for everybody. Maybe it's going to take 30 days. But whenever it is, North Carolina is going to call the SEC and the Big Ten, and they're going to begin talks. North Carolina is the linchpin. They're the ones that have the ignition switch. Now, there's a lot of complications that come with that. We have covered it over and over here at Peek Around the Corner. The Board of Governors, 24 board member. How much is North Carolina State going to impact North Carolina? How much? North Carolina State politically is in a pretty good position with the Board of Governors. When North Carolina, if they go to the Board of Governors and say, look, everything with realignment, we got to get your approval. We got to give you, in accordance to the Board of Governors, new powers that was passed last January, North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill, the president has to present, the chancellor has to present a viable economic plan to the Board of Governors that would show that North Carolina, Chapel Hill would benefit from a conference affiliation move, a change in of conference affiliation, and it would not harm other public universities of the state of North Carolina that are part of the constituency of this Board of Governors. So North Carolina, it ain't going to be easy, right? It ain't going to be easy for them to change conference affiliation. Now, however, I don't think there is a doubt that there's going to be a lot of communication between North Carolina, SEC, North Carolina, and the Big Ten. The North Carolina SEC situation is a lot more clear-cut. North Carolina is a big brand that resides in the home of Disney, SEC, ESPN. Corporate office, ACC in Charlotte. ESPN in the state of North Carolina. ESPN is not going to want to give up that brand. They're not going to want to give up that university. They're not going to want to give up the biggest brand in the state. Right? Also, I think it would be easier. I think it would be a lot easier. I'm not saying this is, look, we might be 3 years away from action. We're going to get back to that. We're going to circle back to that in a moment. But North Carolina is the linchpin. It's going to be a lot easier for the SEC to say to North Carolina, we are going to give you the full freight. You're going to get the full payout. Versus the Big Ten. I don't believe the Big Ten can do it unless Notre Dame is involved. Ohio, Oregon, and Washington are getting half freight. You're not going to give North Carolina full freight. You're not going to offer it unless you pick up Oregon and Washington. And I don't think these media companies have the stomach for it unless Notre Dame comes along. So because North Carolina is an ESPN ACC school, because I believe that the SEC is going to have more space, more wiggle room to offer North Carolina the full freight, because everything we've been told here at Peek Around the Corner that the SEC wants North Carolina for all the reasons we have talked about, because of all this, I think it is more likely that the SEC talks more seriously to North Carolina here in the very short term. Every person that I talk to, even our North Carolina money perch, who, by the way, would rather have North Carolina join the Big Ten. We've talked about that. He's a part of the effort for the new hockey arena at North Carolina, but they're in the minority. He has said over and over and over and over and over again that the boosters pretty much line up with the SEC option. Not all of them, but the majority of the money, right? And everybody that I've talked to independently, and I could be, ladies and gentlemen, I could end up dead wrong here, but I'm just telling you, everybody that I talk to, every single person that I talk to absolutely agrees with Pete Thamel, Ross Dellinger, Brett McMurphy, Heather Dinich. It's all been the same. The SEC wants North Carolina. The Big Ten doesn't always get what it wants, but the SEC, yeah, they kind of do. So now, and I'm not shutting the door on the North Carolina Big Ten. No way, no how. Not going to do it. Not going to shut the door on any options. Not going to do it, guys. There's too much unknown. There's way too much unknown. Way too much unknown. But I'm just giving you my best shot right now because the SEC wants North Carolina. Okay. So, again, we get back to this North Carolina, this Virginia situation. If there is a pursuit, if we hear about it, if it's reported on, if we get a public announcement that there's a meeting going on at the Board of Governors of North Carolina, if we smell any of that, again, I think if you just push away the North Carolina state question right now, I think it's going to be that North Carolina-Virginia combo. And if that is the case, that is more evidence that the world hasn't completely flipped, hasn't completely changed. That schools, presidents are still looking out for their conference in diverse ways than just viewership number of a college football program. And we're not going down the road of a super league where we're only going to have the top 40 college football program. I do not believe that's where we're heading. But we're going to find out here. We're going to find out if there's a North Carolina, Virginia steam here in the next 3 years, but let's just say the next 6 months to see if anything is popping. Now, for Clemson and Florida State, you are in the best position you have been in since, well, I can't even put a year on it, really. The talk about North Carolina and Virginia being the number one and the top targets for the SEC and the Big Ten, we've talked about it for months, for years and everything, and I know some people get a little bit. Clemson and Florida State are the biggest college football brands in the conference. They're definitely top 40 in the nation. Florida State and Clemson are top 10. Whatever. Top 12. Top 8. Whatever. Don't matter. They're way up there. And we've been saying here forever, they're going to eventually get to that stratification line. It might not be a straight shot, but they're going to get to where they need to get because they're too big of valuable brands, too big of fan bases, too damn valuable to be stopped. And we're seeing all that play out. For North Carolina and Virginia to possibly be the number one targets, and I still think that to be true, that's not bad news. In fact, this number is so damn low, this $165 million number. Let's talk about the number. In other words, Clemson and Florida State has always needed the potentiality of the ACC implosion that was bigger than those two schools, and they got it. They got it. Of all the victories that Florida State and Clemson got and getting a whole lot more revenue on that unequal, the biggest victory they got is that number is starting so low that anything is possible in the next 3 years. And that is exactly what the Seminoles and the Tigers needed. But let's get to the number. And then we're going to open up the phone calls. Let's get to the number. 165. To me, it's not 165. It's not even 165. I get it. I get it. That's a whole lot of money. That's a whole lot of money. But it ain't even, when you look at, okay, when I look at it, it's not 165. I mean, it is, but it's 90. It's 90 million. Give me a chance to explain. I was able to have a long conversation with somebody who's a whole lot smarter than I am. Everybody is, but this guy's a whole lot smarter than I am. And he laid it out even for a simpleton like me to understand. It's going to cost, or we'll just use Florida State for an example. Let's use Florida State. By the way, North Carolina, Virginia to the SEC. If that would happen, I don't think that decreases the chances of Florida State and Clemson going to the SEC. In fact, I think it increases the chances. It might increase the chance of Florida State and Clemson, one of those two schools, going to the Big Ten. But I actually think the acquisition of Virginia and North Carolina greases the skids for Florida State and Clemson. We'll talk about that later. I want to talk about the money. It's going to cost Florida State $75 million to get out of the conference in 2030 after the 29-30 season. It would cost Florida State the next year $75 million. The next year $75 million. It's a flat $75 million from 30 on to 36. Well, so you're going to have to pay $75 million to get out of the conference. And you're not going to want to be, I'm not, no shots. You're not going to be, if you're Florida State, you're not going to want to be part of this conference in 2032, 33, 34, 35, 36. Even if you're doing a lot of winning, even if you're making all that money, you're not, the conference is going to be withering. It's going to be dying because of everything we said before. The bottom half, the resources, the bottom half of the conference is going to be so far behind the Big 12 schools and the Big 10 and the SEC. It's going to get worse and worse. You're going to want to get out. So if you're going to pay $75 million, you're going to pay it earlier, right? You're going to pay that 30. You're going to pay it in 2031. You're not going to wait till 2036. So the $75 million is sort of, you got to pay it. It's there, but it's not even, it can't even be part of the equation. In other words, it's $90 million. 90 plus 75. The 75, you got to figure out how to pay it because that's going to be paid. That has to be paid. If North Carolina, Virginia, whatever ACC school has an opportunity to jump out, the 75 has to be paid. It's about the timing. $90 million if you wanted to get out this year. 90 plus 75. And then it goes down $18 million for 5 years until it hits 75, and then it's a flat. So the question is, is it beneficial to a Florida State to pay that extra $18 million? Do you want to go 90 to 72? And then if you have the opportunity, you pull the trigger? Or 72 to what, 54? For Florida State, who's going to be making a lot of money, and Clemson is going to be making a lot of money with their viewership, with their success initiative, that is a more difficult decision to make. Although I would say if the opportunity is SEC, the Big Ten, you pay whatever it is that you have to pay and get out, in my humble opinion. If you're North Carolina, you're not going to get the viewership number extra money. You do not have a scheduling agreement playing every year with Notre Dame like Clemson does. 2 out of every 3 years like Florida State does. 2 out of every 3 years like Miami does with Notre Dame. North Carolina is going to be playing Notre Dame a little less. They're going to be playing Miami, Florida State, Clemson a little less. North Carolina, when it comes to the viewership part of it, And in the Success Initiative, how much is North Carolina getting? I mean, is North Carolina going to be a loser in that or a winner in that when it comes to this new unequal revenue sharing? I would submit that North Carolina may be a tiny winner. Okay? Maybe a tiny winner overall versus what they're currently going to get in revenue from the ACC. Having said that, is North Carolina projections, because they're internally looking at this stuff, right? They're looking at the Success Initiative, the viewership number, and the history of their viewership number in football. That's going to go up a little bit with Bill Belichick. And then you've got the current ACC payouts with the network and their tier 1. And they're looking at projections. They got to look at the projections and say, are we going to be within $18 million of conference payout in the next 3-4 years versus Auburn, versus Tennessee, versus Missouri, versus Bama, versus the Rebels? Are we going to be within $18 million? Now remember, the SEC media contract is backloaded. It's going to keep going up, 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 up. Remember the playoff distribution model starting in 26. How much more millions does every SEC team get versus the ACC team when it comes to just the playoff distribution model alone? Not to mention all the football tickets that you would sell if you're at SEC members, with all those people visiting your stadium. Probably the new sponsorship money in signage in football stadium for North Carolina. Everything that goes with the SEC network payouts. Is North Carolina going to be able to stay within $18 million of the SEC payouts the next 3 or 4 years? I do not have the answer to that question. I don't. But right now, I am leaning no, they don't. Right? That's what I think. I'm not sure on that. Hopefully Wild Judah, somebody a lot smarter than I, can crunch those numbers. But I think that is important. Because when North Carolina sits down with the SEC, and they will, and they're going to have first-party talks, not third-party talks, first-party talks, and they will, that's going to be part of the calculations versus what the SEC does as they look through their periscope from Birmingham, Alabama, all the way to Rosemont, Illinois, looking at the Big Ten corporate office, making sure that the Big Ten ain't making no moves on the Tar Heels. That's got to be part of the equation on what the SEC does. It's part of the equation that what North Carolina does. Because it's $18 million extra every single year the earlier North Carolina gets out of the ACC. So it has to be the benefit of North Carolina, $18 or plus million to pull that trigger. And I think we are probably right now in the sweet spot. Like, I think it probably would be beneficial to North Carolina to go ahead and pay the $165 because the benefits is going to outweigh the cost. So going back to the original part of this live show, everything that I've heard, and maybe, you know what, maybe everybody I talk to, maybe the world has passed them by. It did not pass them by on the USC story, on the Oregon-Washington story, on the Colorado story, but maybe this is where me, the BTM and Associates, maybe this is where we get passed. We get passed on by. But I don't believe that the SEC is thinking about anything but themselves. Every decision they're making, they're going to be pushing for the 4 automatic qualifiers along with the Big Ten, new distribution model, the governance power, all these things that they've gained. I don't think the SEC is looking, I don't think they're going to cede power for the greater good, because I think the SEC looks out and says, nobody knows what the hell they're doing but us. That might not be true, but I'm just saying that's what the SEC, they're not going to cede power. I think everything that the Big Ten doing is for themselves. It's for them. I think everything that the Big 12 doing, they're planning to get ahead of the ACC at some point. For them to poach the ACC schools at some point. To bring that private capital money in to help the value of those programs until they can poach everything that your mark is thinking about is Big 12. Until somebody can show me evidence building towards a 60 to 70, 80 team Super League, or evidence building towards a 40 team Super League, but you know what? It could be just anybody joining this Super League based upon the top 40 college football value brands, and Northwestern is out, and Purdue's out, and Mississippi State's out. There is no evidence of any of that the people that I talk to. Again, if we start hearing reports that they're gathering wins, there's evidence of a Super League being built, that Ohio State is supporting it, that Alabama is okay, I'm going to come on here and take the L. I've already taken an L today on my $200 to $240 million prediction, and it was 165. I'll take another L, but I don't see it. And again, Virginia. Ross Dellinger, many within the industry believe that UNC is the most attractive expansion target for the Power 2. North Carolina industry source told him it's the Lynchpin. Pete Thamel, North Carolina, Virginia would be coveted by both the Big Ten and the SEC. Have we, we've seen big changes in college football. Have we gone quickly from that to a world in which Virginia would not even be included because they are not one of the top 40 college football brands? Is not only Sankey and Petitti going to give up their power, they're going to cede all their power, but the university presidents are going to cede their power on who their university, their athletic departments, on who they play, who they schedule. Because that would be what would happen if the Super League would come in and they start running the show on the Big Ten and the SEC. Are they going to actually cede power? Is Virginia going to get kicked to the side? Are they going to be, and now, again, if we see reports on Virginia being coveted by the SEC and the Big Ten, forget the reports of 9 months ago. If we see new reporting here in the next 6 months, new reporting, I think you can officially squash the Super League football separation based upon college football brands. I think you can squash that story finally. But again, we haven't heard anything new, right? So keep your head on a swivel, but I just wanted to make that a part of this, the major part of this live show. I wanted to get that out before we start hearing reports, okay? A peek around the corner. Okay, I'm going to open up the phone lines here. Going to open up the phone lines once I get through these incredibly... Greg the Godfather, Flugar, the OG realignment, the inside source. Thank you, Wild Ute. Again, you're being way too kind with that. Number one. Number two, I could be dead wrong. I'm not trying to be wrong. I'm not trying to be wrong here. I'm trying to be correct. I'm trying to give the correct peek around the corner. I could be dead wrong. I mean, look, Dennis Dodd's article today. You've got Stuart Mandel saying the football conference structure is gone. It's dying. It's going to go away. You've got Mr. John Wilner, ACC settlement and alignment of media rights contracts. We can set the doomsday clock for college football's current conference structure. And by the way, I'm not even a big believer that the media rights contracts have an alignment, to be honest with you. I'm really not a believer in that. I mean, the Big Ten is 29 and 30. The SEC's 2034. What the Big 12? What is the Big 12? About the Big 12 is 29 and 30, 31. The same time as the Big 10? All right. Okay. And now the ACC is 2031? Well, again, if the SEC and the Big 10 make this formal scheduling agreement happen, I think those current media rights agreement, those current grant of rights for the Big Ten, I think they're going to get extended. I think Fox and CBS and NBC are going to get they're going to be paying more money for this formal scheduling agreement, but there's going to be a couple years tacked on. You've also got to look, I think that's what's going to happen, and maybe I'm wrong, but then you got the Big 12 situation. They're looking at a final deal, a possible decision in weeks with private capital. That decision could very well happen in March. An infusion of cash, an infusion of connections, business flowing from private capital connections into the Big 12. And I think that there's probably going to be an extended commitment among those Big 12 schools. So I'm not even sure if the alignment of the dates, that could change. It's out, everything's in flux, right? Anyways, Wild Ute, thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you so much for your friendship. Thank you so much for disagreeing with me, because it would be boring if we agreed with each other. Wild Ute, go check him out at College Football Mafia Show. He's a smart dude. Okay, he's not Minnesota math. He's Utah brilliance. Go check out Wild Ute at College Football. Ryan Willie, I wish there was a time machine to go back to the 70s and 80s. Well, I'm going to be selfish here. Ryan Willie, thank you for the super chat. But if we went back to the 70s and 80s, my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers would be losing football games by 30, 40 points. We'd be getting squashed. I got nightmares, especially of the 80s. There were some good 70 teams. 1977 Minnesota Golden Gophers. But the 1980s is a complete nightmare for my beloved Golden Gophers. Thank you for the super chat, Ryan Willie. I do know what you're talking about. I get it. Thank you so much for your generosity. The Expedition Greg, the Buckeyes. Always glad to be here. The OG of realignment. Thank you for everything you do, Godfather. Thank you, Expedition Greg, for everything you do behind the curtain here at Peek Around the Corner. Expedition Greg has always got his head on a swivel. He's always helping me out. I do appreciate it. Appreciate your generosity and all that. Thank you so very much. Let's open up the phone lines. Again, North Carolina, I believe, is the linchpin in the next conference movement. 763-260-1333. Let me have it. Let me know how wrong I got it once again. Tomorrow we're going to be doing a way too early SEC rankings. Don't miss it. Do not miss it.
From
I did not get the name. Hello.
Right, can you hear me?
I cannot hear you. Your volume is low.
Greg?
Yes, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hey, sorry, it's Chris Kenny. My bad.
Oh, okay. Thanks for calling, my man. Go ahead, sir.
It's funny. There's a guy in the chat named Chris Kinney, Kinnui. So shout out to my cousin there. Isn't that weird?
Good deal. Yes.
Anyway, I heard the show last night. I tried to call in. I think the Lord moves in mysterious ways because you were talking to JD, and I think you took the phone off the hook, and I'm glad you did because I think what I would have said would have gotten me banned from PATC for profanity. So I've calmed down.
Holy smokes.
The Holy Spirit is with me. I'm going to be restrained, but I am probably the only Northwestern fan who watches your show. And
yeah.
The amount of nonsense that I heard and then read in the chat yesterday had me fired up. But I'm here to respond in a composed manner. Let me just say it this way. They hate us because they ain't us. All right? That is the bottom line takeaway that I get from all of this nonsense talk about kicking schools out like Northwestern from the leagues that they founded 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I will note this. I don't hear, hardly ever, this kind of like contraction wish casting from Ohio State or from Michigan or from Penn State alums. I heard Moen on yesterday who said that he wants to keep playing Northwestern. And I was at the 2004 Northwestern Ohio State game. When we beat Ohio State, I was the first student to rush the field. I gave Randy Walker a hug at midfield. I think got thrown off of him by a cop, but it was on ESPN. My parents thought it was the best night of my college experience was that game. 95% of the time, all of the nonsense that I hear about kicking Northwestern out of the Big Ten or kicking Purdue out of the Big Ten or kicking Vanderbilt out of the SEC, whomever, pick a team, comes from people who aren't fans or graduates of schools in the Big Ten or the SEC. Okay, now I am not naive. I know that Northwestern is without a doubt, and Vanderbilt too, like the winners of the history lottery, okay? Northwestern won the lottery in college athletics because they attended a luncheon at the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago 100 years ago, just like Indiana did and just like Minnesota did, okay? But the fact remains that they were at the right meeting at the right time, and that is how history works, okay? Yeah. Like Rhode Island, little old Rhode Island has just as many senators as California, okay? Yeah. Like Wyoming has more livestock than people, but they've got just as many senators as Texas. Like sometimes history is weird, and that is how it works. Yeah. Okay? I got news for you, not for you because you know this, but a lot of these other people. Not only was Northwestern at that meeting, the University of Chicago was at that meeting. And if the University of Chicago had not voluntarily left the Big Ten in the 1940s, they'd be in the Big Ten today. Tulane and Georgia Tech, if they had not voluntarily left the SEC, they would still be in the SEC today. No one has gotten kicked out. No one is going to get kicked out. If these people believe that somehow schools like Michigan and Ohio State, or even USC, now that they're in the league, are going to tell a school like Northwestern or Purdue or Minnesota to take a hike, then these people have absolutely no idea how university presidents, who are the ultimate decision makers in this, think and behave. I have said this on your show many, many times, but these contraction little chicken littles keep chirping, so I have to respond, but I will say this again. Santa Ono is not the president of Michigan Wolverines football, okay? Ted Carter is not the president of Ohio State Buckeyes football. They're the presidents of major research universities who deal in the billions of dollars, not in the millions of dollars. The vast majority of these presidents, let me tell you, do not care one iota about college football. Like, if you really ask them, they don't care. For many of them, I think it is an inconvenience. These are academics, but they make peace with athletics because they know that it is the front porch, as you say, the front porch of their universities. But do you know where the kitchen is? The kitchen's the research lab. Okay, that's where everybody eats.
Yeah.
And these schools get literally billions, with a B, billions of dollars in research funding because they are associated with schools like Northwestern and Purdue. And the guy who called in yesterday and was like, oh, but the Big Ten will still exist. It's just, this is just for football. There'll still be a Big Ten for research purposes. People like that need to get a dose of reality. If Northwestern is thrown out or Purdue is thrown out of the Big Ten for football, then there is a 0% chance that those ejected schools will somehow continue to work with the schools that stab them in the back in any other context. And those contexts are worth way more than any possible TV contract can bring. There is a 0% chance that they would do that. Purdue has, I think, the best aerospace engineering program in America. It's where Neil Armstrong went to college, for God's sake. They can just as easily do their research with Carnegie Mellon and MIT, okay? Northwestern could go down to the south side of Chicago and do more work with the University of Chicago or do work with the Ivy League. Ohio State and Michigan have no incentive whatsoever to disturb those relationships. They get the benefit of the research dollars, they get the benefit of the pedigree, and hello, they still win all the football games. The fact that I'm talking to you about 2004 when Northwestern last beat Ohio State is proof that the system works for Ohio State. There is 0 incentive for them to go out and throw the other schools that they've been partners with for a century out the door. And all the people who say, oh, but nobody cares, Greg, about academics. Like, we care about football and we care about television ratings. Those people think that, like, perfect market forces will create some beautifully efficient product, like these institutions are selling widgets. But has anyone actually observed higher education? There's nothing about it that is economically efficient. It's one of the most economically inefficient industries we have. It's basically a cartel, and the guys who are in charge of the cartel like to keep it that way. These are university presidents who make these decisions. And I will tell you, they are among the most ambitious people in America. I have been not in like fundraisers with 500 people. I've been in rooms professionally across conference tables from university presidents, not like every day. I know it sounds like a jerk, but I have on multiple occasions been in the same room around a table with these people. They are always climbing the ladder. When you talk about relationships, Greg, what do you really mean? You really mean that these people are always trying to move up, and they are not moving up on the basis of who's got a better football program. Okay, they are moving up on the basis of what they believe is the most prestigious university. And let me give you a couple of examples. Do you know who the current president of Northwestern is? His name is Michael Schill.
Yeah, he was the former Oregon, yes.
That's exactly right. He was from Oregon. And do you know why he has that job? I'll tell you. It became vacant because, unfortunately, the woman who took the job, Rebecca Blank, passed away of cancer, and they had to fill the job. Do you know where Rebecca Blank was before she took the job at Northwestern?
Yes.
She was at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Okay. These people are not voting to stab their century-long partner in the back and risk their professional careers in the process for a few million extra dollars in a TV deal that doesn't end up going to them anyway. Okay, that isn't going to happen. And the fact that people say, oh, but USC did it and Texas did it. Yeah, they did, but why did they do it? You said it in your monologue. They did it to get to the top. Yeah. The Big Ten and the SEC are the top. Once you are in the club, you aren't getting thrown out. Okay, those two schools left their old leagues because they saw the future of college athletics and realized that they could not compete for championships at the highest level against the Power Two in those old leagues. But now that they are in the club, they do have the ability to do that. Look what Texas did in 1 year. Look what Oregon did in 1 year. They have the resources, the exposure, the prestige, all of it to compete. Universities do not have shareholders, okay? They do not pay dividends. They are not chasing every nickel to maximize a stock price. Okay. The only thing they need athletic money for is to compete at the highest level. If you are in the Big Ten and you are in the SEC, you have enough money relative to your peers to compete and win. And Texas and Oregon just prove that. But now somehow people are saying, now that everybody's gotten to the top and Oregon and Texas just arrived in the club, they've been there for a cup of coffee, that they're now going to throw all that away for some stupid Super League that kicks out Northwestern.
Oregon and Washington are taking half shares for 5 years, and now it's like,
to do what? To go back to playing Utah and Texas Tech? That's who
to
they
go back
just
to
left.
playing a West Coast division. Yeah, it doesn't.
It makes no sense. Okay, I will stipulate this. I think the last 10, 15 years or whatever, realignment has sucked. Okay, the guy in the chat who said I want to go in a time machine, I would go back to 1990, and I would put the leagues back the way they were. I'd put the old independents in leagues that make sense, and they'd have 10 or 12 teams and round robin schedules. That isn't going to happen. Like that era is over. So I think what is going to happen is that the Big Ten and SEC aren't going anywhere. They're going to get bigger. They're going to grow. You say 20, I think 24 because it solves some of those logistical problems. But either way, like they're not going anywhere. They're going to get bigger, and if they go anywhere, they're going to break away and do their own thing. And if they go to 24 teams, I'm telling you right now, if they go as big as 24 and maybe even 20 in some cases, Stanford and Duke are coming along. They aren't getting left behind. And the reason is because those same university presidents want those schools. And just because Fox said no to Stanford once does not mean that they will say no to them again. They said no because they had already negotiated and agreed to a multi-billion-dollar media deal. And they, like you said, they gave Oregon and Washington half shares, but that was it. They had cost certainty. They weren't going to reopen the deal after they agreed to that deal. But what happens when the deal comes up for renewal? The media rights of all those big brands, Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and Southern Cal now, they come all back up for bidding, and those schools say, we'd love to do business with you again, but guess what? Oregon and Duke get to come, or excuse me, Stanford and Duke get to come along. What do you think Fox is going to say? What do you think Amazon, if they get in this game, is going to say? Oh, sorry, like that's too rich for our blood? That isn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So all these people in the Big 12 and these other leagues who hate that, hate Northwestern, they hate Vanderbilt because they're going to get to go along for the ride. And the unfortunate reality is maybe one or two of their programs will get to come with them. I'm sorry, I don't know what else to tell you. It's the same people who simply somehow, despite everything you said this evening, cannot understand why North Carolina and Virginia are the top two candidates. Do you know who wants North Carolina and Virginia in the SEC? Okay, it's Georgia and Alabama and Florida, and they want to have those schools in their league with them for the same reasons that Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State want Northwestern. Okay, they want to be more integrated with a school like Vanderbilt, not less. Okay, you don't get that way by kicking them out of a stupid football conference. And the team that is, and I'll end on this. I know I've been on a rant, but it's really just ticked me off for 24 hours.
Yeah.
What is the team, Greg? What is the school that is the most worried about getting kicked out of one of those two conferences? What school is the most worried?
I'll tell you who the most worried is. I don't think they need to be worried, but they are. That's Nebraska.
You're right. And I agree with you. I don't think they have anything to be worried about either. But they are the ones who are worried about getting kicked out. It ain't Northwestern.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt's not worried about it. Vanderbilt just bought a multi-million-dollar piece of property in Manhattan because they're building a campus in New York City. Okay, they're building a campus in Palm Beach next to all of their very wealthy private equity alums. Yeah. All of a sudden, Georgia and Alabama don't want to be associated with that anymore. Yeah. Get real, people. Just because this is about funding for rocket science, don't make it rocket science. It's very simple. Nobody's going anywhere. Stop projecting your despair on fan bases and schools that do get to come along for the ride when yours don't. I hate to tell you, it's unfair, but that is life. You need to stop, and you need to stop wasting your breath.
All right,
that's all I got. It's been on my mind. I've been pissed off. Thank you for letting me rant.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the call. Call again.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
I agree with pretty much with all that. I mean, Vanderbilt ain't going to kick. Have you ever been in Northwestern? You go walk through. I've been to Northwestern, and yeah, they're not getting these. Let me go a different angle on this. There are very smart people. Very smart people. I mean, look, there's a whole bunch of people. Wilner doesn't think the conference's structure is going to stay together. You saw Dennis Dodd's article. All these people are smarter than I am. So, maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Maybe this has gone past me. I don't know. But so let's say you are Super League's coming in, right? Super League's coming in, and you're getting the top 40 college football brands, right? A lot of them are going to be the SEC. A lot of them is going to be the Big Ten. You're going to kick some Big Ten schools out. You're going to kick some SEC schools out. And you're going to bring in some ACC, some Big 12 brands, right? No doubt about it. Florida State, Clemson, Miami, they're top 40. Maybe you can get a few others, okay? Maybe Utah. Anyways, let's say you do top 40 college football brands, okay? Now, one of those schools, for many years, most people in the chat room, in fact, they did it last year, the year before, Indiana should be kicked out of the Big Ten. Indiana should get the boot. They're not even trying. And look what Indiana just did. So does that mean now Indiana is one of the top 40 brands? Or, I mean, to me it's so like, it's so flimsy. It's so...
Call from
Edward the Auburn Tiger.
Edward the Auburn Tiger. Can you hold on for one moment, please? Edward the Auburn Tiger. Can you hold on one moment, please?
I sure can.
Okay, thank you. To me, it's like we're going to, 106 years of relationship between the Buckeyes and Purdue. That don't mean Ohio State and Purdue. That don't mean much, Greg. That doesn't mean much. Come on. You saw what happened. USC left and Florida State took ACs. Those 106 years relationships, they don't mean much. But you know what means a lot is the top viewership numbers in college football. In Indiana, they shouldn't be. Oh, wait a second. What happened? Indiana, 11-1. Okay, they're in. You're gonna base a Super League on what last year's the 5-year roll. What are you gonna? You're gonna base it on. What are you basing it on? You're gonna base it on. You're gonna base it on private equity valuations. Let me show you something here. Are you going to base it on private equity valuation? Now, if I could just find it. My goodness. I am... here we go. Now, this doesn't show the separate schools. I don't have that slide saved. But you saw the valuations of the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, right? You see the valuations there and the average valuation? Okay, so we're going to do it on a whatever this private capital, big money is coming on in. Okay, we're going to base it on their valuation, their brand valuations. That means Northwestern's out, right? No, you can't even say that because Northwestern's going to be one of the top 40 valuations because they're building an $800 to $1 billion football stadium, ladies and gentlemen, with zero debt. I cannot wait for the new valuations that come out in a couple of years. Northwestern's going to shoot. It don't matter that they have only 35,000 seats instead of 49,000 or 50,000 or 55,000. $800 to $1 billion on that land, on that particular piece of land with zero debt. So you can't even, if you're going to kick out Northwestern, you can't even base it upon private capital valuations because they would have Northwestern in the top 40, in my opinion. Go ahead, Edward, the Auburn Tiger, and Vanderbilt as well, because they're pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars. Anyways, Edward, the Auburn Tiger, go ahead. Thank you, sir.
Greg, another great show. And I'm like you, no one is going anywhere. These schools are committed to one another, and I think the bond they have is really unbreakable. I really do. And I think that the House settlement is going to prevent that breakaway because everybody will be able to afford the cost of college football and everything else that goes with it. You know, a lot of times, Greg, you can know where we're going by looking backwards and how we got here. I remember when Oklahoma and Texas joined the SEC. They joined at a time when SEC was not even in negotiations for a new contract. It was in the middle of a contract series that they had, and they were added. Mm-hmm. And I can remember on your show, the discussion was that the moment that Oklahoma and Texas joined the league, at the SEC, their brands begin to multiply. And that's exactly what's going to happen in North Carolina. And I want to ask you a question because this is kind of blurred due to the discussions we had in the past. The SEC does have pro rata, don't it?
They have what?
They have pro rata, don't they?
Yes, they do.
I believe the discussion we had is that they can add four teams. In other words, they can offer these teams full payout day one of these teams being added. You know, so the SEC is not on the timeline as everyone else. Now, if you look at this, they added Oklahoma and Texas in the middle of a contract series that they have with ESPN. And back then, I want to say about 2 or 3 years ago, 2026 was the date everyone was talking about. Everyone was thinking that was going to be the next realignment date, the next shifting day. I remember a lot of discussions about that date, much like we're talking about 2030. And given everything you said about North Carolina, how they're not going to be getting the extra money like Clemson and Florida State's going to be getting because their football brand is nowhere near theirs. And given their situation, I'm not going to give up on 2026 of there being conference realignment. I'm really not, because I believe they're on the schedule. Think about this, Greg. Nothing shifted in the court system with Florida State and Clemson and the ACC until ESPN got involved. Mm-hmm. About this time last year, we had a discussion.
You're right.
And we were
You're
saying,
correct.
And we were saying that ESPN was in the catbird seat. And, of course, we knew after a couple months of that, everything was shut down, seemed to be. Big Ten, SEC walked out of the theater, and it seemed like there was a great reset.
Yep.
Well, it's amazing that everything's happened. And we went from being way behind schedule to actually now being so far ahead of schedule of what's happened with Clemson and Florida State and these teams' ability to lead the ACC. Look at this, with minimal cost is what you're punching it today. I love it. Minimal cost. And look at this, Greg. You have the Big Ten and SEC in negotiations with each other. They're going to be having a scheduling agreement. They're going to be reconfiguring the playoff system where they're going to be guaranteed four automatic bids. Look at the timing of that. Look at the SEC going to 9 games. All of this by 2026. Look at that. That timing, all these moves, given what we knew in the past, that the SEC does not have to wait on a negotiation window to add teams. They have a pro rata. They can add them tomorrow if they wanted to. If ESPN has already signed up on it because they already signed the deal that guaranteed the pro rata. I'm thinking 2026, Greg.
It could. I'm more. It could. I think the chalk. I think it could. I It could. Now, first of all, let me get to Moanopoly. Moen, Super Chat, thank you so much, kind sir. I appreciate it. Chris Front Porch, kitchen analogy is spot on. Well done, sir. I'm absolutely stealing it. I do that a lot. I steal people's great comments here on the phone calls, and I make them my own. Moanopoly is letting Chris know that he is absolutely stealing it. Thank you, Super Chat. Thank you, Moan, for the Super Chat. I appreciate it very much. Edward the Auburn Tiger. Let's just do some pretending here, okay? Edward, you are the president of Auburn, right?
Yes, sir.
You're sitting there and you get a phone call from Sankey, and Sankey saying, President Edward, we're just letting you know, this is all confidential, but we're going to be doing some first party talks with North Carolina. What are your pros and cons of North Carolina? I would imagine, President Edward Auburn, I'd imagine you would tell Sankey the following. Well, let's see here. Auburn, look at our basketball program. Look at our basketball. North Carolina, that'd be pretty interesting, pretty dramatic stuff. Auburn, North Carolina. We may be able to go up more into North Carolina to do some recruiting. North Carolina. And then you look at the football and you're saying, well, they're not going to really hurt us in football. I don't know if our fans are going to have that much interest in traveling up there. But you know what, Sankey? You know what I'm really interested in when it comes to the possible addition of North Carolina? We're sitting here in Auburn, Alabama. I want those students. I want to have North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, to be branded SEC country, with North Carolina, the biggest brand in the state, the big public university, be SEC country. I want to be able to send people from Auburn University up to North Carolina and do some research, do a whole bunch of different things in North Carolina. I want to be able to project Auburn, the major brand of Auburn, the logo, the history, the pedigree, everything. Auburn. I want to be able to plant a flag in the state of North Carolina because I want to compete for those students. Edward the Auburn Tiger, let me know if I got any of that wrong. Is that what you believe? Is that what you believe you would say to Sankey, or would it be completely different?
That is exactly what I would say to Sankey, and a whole lot more, because there's nothing but big time incentives of getting a North Carolina and a Virginia, of getting these teams into the SEC, not later, but right now, because I am in a negotiation with ESPN for college football, for a ninth game, a scheduling agreement with Big Ten, and it will be better for me to do it now because I got chips. The SEC has, what's the word I'm looking for? This is an advantage for the Big Ten and SEC right now. The stage is set. They have a lot of power, not only concerning the rest of the conferences, but with ESPN and with Big Ten. Those networks for Big Ten, Fox, CBS, NBC, they want big-time football. They want eyeballs on the product. They want the SEC involved with the Big Ten. And ESPN wants the Big Ten involved with the SEC. There's a lot of leverage for Big Ten, for SEC, and it is hot right now. And there's nothing. It's not a money situation for the SEC. They have prerogative, and they can offer these teams now. And look at this, Greg. What's the incentive for ESPN? Now look at this. The ESPN has done the unthinkable. They have made the ACC, how can I say it elegantly? They made them conform in signing off on this uh, contract refiguration that they have now with Florida State and with Clemson and the rest of the schools. I'm sure the ACC did not really want to go this direction, but ESPN has moved these pieces. So what does ESPN get out of it? A lot of people say, you know what? Well, they're not going to change it because of the money they have. They've already changed it, Greg. They just changed it. They just allowed these teams a ticket to get out. Now, why would ESPN want these teams to join early? Think about the television market. Why would you wait? Why would you wait to 2030 with the ESPN or vice versa? Big Ten will grow in power and financials and worth. Why would I not want to make a new deal now? Spend money on the front end so I can save money on the back end concerning all these moves and all these schools. Why would I, as a network, will not want to do that?
I find a lot more pros than cons. That's for sure.
Yes. I mean, ESPN has sped the clock up. Why? Why have they sped the clock up? Why did they reduce that to 165, knowing that these teams can get out? Why have they made all these moves? And you think about this too, Greg. You're saying that right now you feel, concerning all the research you've done and the people you've talked to, that North Carolina is going to the SEC.
Well, that's the chalk. I wouldn't close the door on the Big Ten because that the Big Ten would want them desperately. But there's a lot of advantages there's a lot of advantages that the SEC enjoys right now.
Yeah. So, Greg, what that tells us is that SEC has done a lot of work behind the scenes.
No question.
So this is way down the track, farther than people realize. I mean, this is not just. I mean, this decision with ESPN just didn't fall off a cabbage truck. They had this planned. They knew this was coming. ESPN knew they were going to make this move. And I guarantee you, SEC was in the loop of it. And I guarantee you, probably the Big Ten was aware of it too, because they're in it together. I really believe that. It just seemed like to me, when you look at all the chips on the table, that ESPN has sped up the clock. ESPN has incentives. Fox, NBC, CBS definitely has incentives. Big Ten has incentives, and the SEC has incentives to make this happen. Not 2030, but right now. What do you think about all that?
I mostly agree. Your timeline may be a little quicker than mine, but I mostly agree. But again, Edward the Auburn Tiger, as I said, there's a lot of people who disagree. There's a lot of reporters that say there ain't even going to be an SEC in 2031 or a Big Ten. It's all going to be mushed together in some sort of super league in divisions, regional divisions. No more Big Ten commissioner, no more Big Ten network. It's all going to be, somebody's going to have this great vision. It's all going to work out. It's going to be a big old whatever. So people disagree. Maybe, Edward, maybe time has passed us by. You and me, sir.
That's right. I got one more thing, Greg, if that's okay. Do you believe ESPN, Fox, NBC, and CBS, why would they want to bring in third party into negotiations in the future? Wouldn't you think they would just like to deal with Big Ten and SEC directly instead of outside entities coming in and not being able to make decisions because they have investments?
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more if if outside investment's going to come in a big way in the Big Ten and the SEC, I think they're going to make it more insular. I don't see, how can I say this bluntly? The Big Ten and the SEC have been acting a certain way for the last decade, and suddenly they're going to flip and think about the greater good for everybody instead of, I don't.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you, Greg. They're thinking. Listen, the moment when Sankey had worked with those other commissioners to get that 12-team playoff, and then they came up with, when the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 came up with that group and blocked it. That was the turning point for the SEC.
Yeah,
that was the turning point for Sankey, and I'm telling you, that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
The SEC is looking out for the SEC. I promise you. Now, they are in conjunction with Big Ten, and I think that's a powerful friendship and a growing friendship, and I think them two together is better than apart. I think they realize that. They see that. But in terms of going backwards and trying to save all of college football, that ship has sailed.
No. All righty, sir. I do appreciate the call, my man.
All right, thank you, sir. Great job, Jared.
You got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Great call, Edward, the Auburn Tiger. I did not get to a member for 7 months, Antoine Johnson. Mr. Sun Devil himself, thank you so very much, Johnson. Antoine, thank you for your generosity. You are hereby knighted once again, cloak and dagger. Thank you so very much. I do apologize, Johnson, for not getting to your membership renewal. 7 months, holy smokes. Arizona State is not in the Big Ten because Minnesota is scared of Arizona State hockey. Arizona State doing a lot of good things. A lot of good things. Hockey program, football, holy smokes. Last year was so much fun. This year is going to be a lot of fun. By the way, the Vikings are talking to Cam Scatterboo. Might be a second-round draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. We shall see. Anyways, Arizona State doing a lot of great things. Of course, AAU. So, I've got Arizona State at the top of the Big 12 mountain right now in my way too early predictions. I think Sam Leavitt might be, he's going to be a top 3 quarterback of all of college football this year. Top 3. Thank you, Antoine Johnson. I do appreciate it so very much. For those who are a member of our channel or want to be a member of our channel, go to the link in the description box. Hit the link, become a member. We did put out an episode 55 of Early Peak Cloak and Dagger for members only. Go check that out. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel. And when you subscribe, make sure you turn on those notifications because we can come on live at any time. We do not go on a set schedule. We cover breaking news. We do everything here in college football. We cover everything in college football. This is a national college football YouTube channel. We are the rebel outpost of college football. Please, when you subscribe, turn on those notifications. Before you leave today, smash the like button if you've liked our content. If you did not like our content, hit the thumbs down button. Go ahead, hit the thumbs down button. Let me know in the chat what you did not like about our content, our presentation. I would very much appreciate that. I want to thank everybody for coming on in. We've been on the air for over 2 hours. I want to thank the incredible generosity of the Evil Badger, Ryan Willie, Preston from Greensboro, Jimmy Austin, Wild Ute, the Professor, Expedition Greg, Mr. Buckeye, Mr. Sun Devil, Antoine Johnson, and the Buckeye himself, the legend, the myth, Moanopoly, Mr. Moen. Thank you so much for your generosity. I do appreciate it. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, but at some point tomorrow, we're going to be talking about a couple of things. One, I'm going to be presenting my way too early SEC rankings. Number two, I'm going to be talking about the developing, the beast program that is starting to build in the Sun Belt. There's a program in the Sun Belt Conference, a football program that is looking to take over the conference. It's going to be a premier football program that's going to be competing for that G5 access spot into the college football playoffs year in and year out. We're going to be talking about a certain program in the Sun Belt. And then we'll pick up on whatever's going on here when it comes to the Big Ten and the SEC scheduling agreement, pushing for the automatic spots, possible North Carolina, Lynchpin, old Virginia. We talk about it all. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? But we do know SEC rankings, a certain Sun Belt football program, and a whole lot more. I appreciate you all coming on in. Keep your head on a swivel. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.